The Magic Mill. Not all treasure is buried deep or guarded by dragons. Sometimes a miracle sits right on the table, just waiting for the right words. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there lived a poor peasant who owned nothing but a patch of tired earth. Day after day, he plowed and sowed from sunrise to dusk, then led his 2 oxen out to graze in the deep, shadowy forest. As the stars peeked down through the black branches, the peasant brooded over his sorrows.
What is to become of me now, poor soul? I've sown my last grain. How will I feed my wife and children through the winter? Should we eat these oxen? Then what will we use to plow and sow in spring?
Suddenly, a harsh caw split the silence. An old raven swept down, his black wings glinting, and landed on a branch above the peasant's head.
Oh, what sort of guest do I find here tonight?
The raven eyed the man curiously.
And what sort of guest are you then?
A bold guest indeed. Give me what you have or I'll gobble you up.
Eat or don't eat? It's all the same to me. I've nothing left for myself, let alone for you.
But you have 2 oxen. Will you give me one? I'll feast on him for supper.
He'd hardly fill you. You're thinner than a twig. A single mouse would do you for a week.
Well, will you give or won't you?
Take him, but don't leave behind so much as a hair.
With a rush of wings, the raven swooped down. In less time than it takes to blink, the first ox was gone. No bones, no hide, not even a tuft of fur remained. The peasant stared, stunned. Then, with a long, heavy sigh, he muttered,
Well, you've eaten one. Eat the other too. What's the point in leaving me with just one?
The raven gobbled up the second ox just as fast. The forest seemed to close in around the peasant, grief sinking into his bones.
Now you've ruined me. How will I ever face my wife? I might as well vanish here in the woods.
But the raven, belly full, let out a contented caw and rustled his wings.
Don't be so glum. Since you've fed me, have no fear. I'll pay you for your oxen. Just follow me.
Follow you? Into the jaws of the night? It's darker than a wolf's mouth out here.
Quiet, man. Listen now. Go home and tell your wife you sold the oxen to a rich raven who will pay you in the morning. She'll pack you enough food for a 3-day journey. Follow my trail through the forest. I'll break the tips off the spruces as I go. At journey's end, you'll reach my castle, and there I'll shower you in gold and silver. Don't delay, do as I say.
With a great whoosh, the raven vanished into the night, snapping the tops off the spruces as he went. The peasant trudged home, heart pounding, sure his wife would scratch his eyes out. But when she heard the words, gold and silver, her face brightened, and she became sweeter than a dove.
Don't worry.
She cooed softly.
We'll manage. I'll bake you bread, pack up the leftovers, just bring back that treasure.
Before dawn, she hurried him out the door with a sack of bread. For 3 days and nights, the peasant stumbled after the broken-topped spruces, nibbling at his crusts. On the 3rd evening, his food ran out, and the forest was black as pitch. Suddenly, he blinked in surprise. A shimmering green meadow opened before him, ringed by 3 golden castles. In the middle of the meadow, a herdsman stood by a blazing fire, tall as a pine.
Come on over, man. What brings you so far from home?
I don't know where I am or what I want. But tell me, who lives in those shining castles?
Those are my ravens' flocks. They live there.
Then I'm in luck. I'm searching for a certain raven.
The peasant poured out his tale. The herdsman listened, frowning thoughtfully, and then asked,
Would you recognize your raven among all my flocks?
Of course. He limped on one leg, old and grayer than midnight, with a beak like iron. He ate my oxen in a blink and shattered the forest as he flew.
Let's see if you can spot him.
The herdsman whistled, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the meadow. The sky swarmed with beating wings. Ravens landed on the first golden castle, black as a storm. The peasant searched each face, but none were his. The herdsman whistled again. A second flock settled on the second castle, cawing and muttering. The peasant shook his head.
Still not the one.
A third whistle, now a thunder of wings, as every raven in the world filled the sky and landed on the third castle, darkening its roof. The peasant studied them, searching for a limp or a grey feather. But still, his raven was nowhere to be seen.
Let's see if they're all here.
The herdsman called out. A chorus of caws and croaks rose up from the flock. They were all there, except for old Limpy, who was still lagging behind. The herdsman turned to the peasant, his eyes twinkling.
That must be your raven. While you wait, listen well. My servant Limpy will lead you to the third castle. He'd shower you with gold and silver, but don't be fooled. It turns to sand before sunrise. Only ask for the old mill on the table. You'll soon see what it does. Just say, mill, spin and spin. Table, let the feast begin. Cloth, spread out so fine. Bring good food and drink. Let all be mine. And watch the magic begin.
Soon Limpy arrived, old, limping, sharper of beak than ever.
Where have you been, servant?
Looking for this man in the woods so he wouldn't lose his way.
So you're the one who ate his oxen. Give him whatever he asks for.
Limpy hopped from foot to foot, offering the peasant heaps of gold and piles of silver. But the man only shook his head. The peasant refused all the gold and silver. He only wanted the old mill. Limpy cawed and argued, but finally handed it over, grumbling. The peasant, weary and starving, sat by the roadside, pulled out his prize, and whispered the magic words. Mill, spin and spin. Table, let the feast begin. Cloth, spread out so fine. Bring good food and drink. Let all be mine. At once the mill whirred and a table unfolded. A gleaming cloth spread itself and, pop, roast meats, pies, and fresh bread appeared. He ate his fill, so much that his belt nearly burst. Content at last, he leaned back with a satisfied sigh, just as a hungry shepherd happened by, drawn by the delicious smells in the air.
Share some with me, will you?
Help yourself. There's more than enough.
As soon as they finished, everything vanished back into the mill. The shepherd, impressed, showed off a magic club. One blow from it could defeat any enemy and fetch back whatever you wanted.
I'll trade you my club for your mill.
The peasant agreed, but soon regretted it, not knowing how the club could feed him. Without hesitation, he called for the club to fetch back the mill. The club sprang to life, racing across the field. With a single blow, the shepherd dropped to the ground, lifeless. The club dutifully returned, mill in hand. The peasant went on his way. Soon a soldier appeared, hungry from a long march. The peasant set the mill to work, a feast appeared, and after eating, the soldier showed him a magic sword.
This blade can hack any foe to pieces.
He boasted, and then asked,
Trade me your mill for my sword.
The peasant traded, but soon missed his mill. Without hesitation, he called for the club and sword to fetch it back. As the magic weapons sped away, the soldier barely had time to look up before the club delivered a mighty thump, and the sword flashed like lightning. With a startled yell, the soldier tumbled to the ground and lay as still as a log. So still, not even a breeze could ruffle his hair. A hush fell over the road. The soldier lay in the dust, his helmet knocked off, silent and unmoving. Moments later, the club and sword returned, carrying the mill to their grateful master, the peasant travelled on. Next, he met an artilleryman, exhausted and starving. The peasant fed him, and after eating, the artilleryman took off his strange three-cornered hat, eyes sparkling with pride.
This isn't just any hat.
He began.
If you turn it and say boom, it will fire as many shots as you need. It's the best magic a soldier could wish for. Trade me your mill for my hat.
Again, the peasant traded, and again sent his club and sword to fetch the mill back. At dusk, a white-clad woman, weary from battle, approached, asking for a bite. The mill produced a meal, and after eating, she drew out a shimmering white kerchief, holding it up with both hands. Her eyes glimmered with mystery as she leaned closer.
This is no ordinary kerchief,
she said softly.
With this, you can wipe the eyes of anyone who has fallen, even those lost to death. One gentle touch, and they will open their eyes and live again. Trade me your mill for my magic kerchief.
The peasant agreed and handed over the mill. But soon, just as before, he regretted the trade. After all, a kerchief could not fill his hungry belly. He called for his club and sword again. In a flash, they struck down the white woman and brought the mill back to their master. But as the peasant neared his village, a heavy feeling settled in his heart. He remembered all those he had defeated with his magic, and regret filled him. Taking out the white kerchief, he whispered,
Kerchief, wipe the eyes of all those who fell by my hand.
The kerchief fluttered away. Soon, those that had fallen rose again, alive and well. At last, the peasant returned home and showed his wife the old mill. She scolded him for trading gold and silver for an old piece of wood, but after the first magical meal, all was forgiven. The children danced, the peasant grinned, and even his wife was content. But peace didn't last long. One day, the peasant's wife reminded him that they still owed the landlord a sack of flour, and that he'd been grumbling about it for weeks.
Why don't we send him back the flour? And to keep him happy, I'll bring him a roast turkey and a rabbit from the mill as a gift. Maybe then he'll leave us in peace.
The peasant agreed, and his wife prepared a basket with the flour, a golden roast turkey, and a plump rabbit. She walked to the landlord's mansion and placed the gift upon his table, greeting him politely. But the landlord's face twisted with suspicion. Without waiting for an explanation, he barked,
Where did you get these? You stole the turkey from my farm and the rabbit from my woods. You'll pay for this.
He ordered his servants to lock her up in the castle dungeon and sent his bailiff, the landlord's grumpy helper, to fetch the peasant for questioning. The bailiff soon arrived at the cottage, waving an official letter in the peasant's face.
You and your wife are going to jail for this.
Sir, surely you wouldn't put us in prison for sharing a meal with the landlord?
But the bailiff grew insistent, reaching for the peasant's arm. The peasant, growing angry, called for his club and sword.
Club, sword, defend me!
The magic weapons leapt to action, and soon the bailiff limped home, barely able to explain what had happened. The landlord sent 2 more men. They too were beaten back by the peasant's enchanted arms. In desperation, he sent his entire household, but the peasant's magic weapons drove them all away, sparing only the trembling landlord. A hush fell over the yard as the landlord realized he had finally been defeated. Afterward, the landlord grew fearful, but also jealous of the peasant's power. He began plotting how he might steal the club and sword for himself. One day, he appeared at the peasant's door, wringing his hands.
Neighbor, I must go to war. My enemies gather at my borders, and I need your club and sword to protect my lands. Will you lend them to me?
The peasant, not guessing the trick, agreed and handed over his magic weapons. No sooner had the landlord left than he returned with his army and a wicked demand. At the peasant's door, the landlord growled,
Now, hand over your magic mill as well, or my army will destroy everything you own.
Now, with only his magic hat remaining, the peasant stood his ground. He spun the hat on his head and shouted, "Boom!" At once, lightning flashed and thunder roared, blasting the landlord's army to dust, laying waste to the mansion and toppling the very palace walls. The landlord, terrified at last, dropped to his knees.
Forgive me. Let me serve you instead.
So be it, but let this be a lesson.
The peasant revived everyone with the kerchief, gave them a sound thrashing with the club and sword, just to remind them, and finished it all with a final feast. Mill, spin and spin, table, let the feast begin. Cloth, spread out so fine, bring good food and drink, let all be mine.